when you come up to speak, and then right after, if you can put your website and contact information, how people can get involved in your campaign, then we'll share that out, not only to the PCPs that are here tonight, but to our whole PCP list. So folks are able to connect with you. So thank you very much. And I'll just hide here behind my picture. Okay.
Yeah, Marshall will be the one presenting the questions that come out of the chat to the candidates. So what we'll do is, if you all candidates will take 3 to 4 minutes to just introduce yourself, say hello, let the folks know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll take questions from the chat, and Marshall will present those questions to you, and hopefully we can run through as many a good amount of questions as possible, because this time does actually go pretty quick. Britton Taylor in the chat has posted the order that these are going in, and my understanding is that Rene Gonzalez probably will not be available this evening because he's under the weather. Thank you for posting that, Britton. Okay, so I'm gonna just double check. Terri, is Terri here? No. Okay. Commissioner Ryan is here. So we'll go ahead and get started with Commissioner Ryan. Marshall, are you ready to monitor the chat for questions?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. Commissioner Ryan, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So what we'll do is I'll let you, I'll give you the 3 to 4 minutes. I'll probably just verbally call it out, and then we'll probably try to do a hard stop at about 8 minutes for questions, and then we'll move on to the next candidate after that.
Okay.
Okay, everybody please make yourselves muted if you're not already muted. And Commissioner Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening. It's so nice to see everybody on Zoom. Hello, Multnomah County Democrats. As a proud Democrat since I could register to vote in 1980, it's wonderful to be with all of you. My name is Dan Ryan. I was elected to the Portland City Council less than a year and a half ago. I know it seems longer, and I'm just getting started. And I'm so looking forward to serving my hometown for a full term. I said yes to being a leader for our city at a time when the majority are quite frustrated. I know, I actually was one of them. And for me, it started over a decade ago. I would drive around, I'd walk around, I'd ride my bike around and say, why are local government leaders tolerating the intolerable? Since my arrival, I've been focused. I've been focused on results for homelessness, for community safety, and for economic recovery, with a very committed lens to racial equity and for climate justice. I embraced my lived experience of losing my brother on the streets. My brother, Tim, had a dual diagnosis of mental health and behavioral health addictions. And we've had a lot, and I've had a lot of courage to disrupt the houseless industry as housing first playbook. Not that housing is important, it's of course key, but I think we needed a much needed reset towards service first playbook. That includes on-ramps for those who are chronically homeless to receive services and assessments that leads them to successful housing, work, and life. I stopped the defunding slogan from becoming a failed solution and pivoted to building a community safety system with concrete steps towards restorative justice. And I called out and tackled the notoriously flawed permitting system, a failed system that works for no one, actually. In fact, it's become a major roadblock for building affordable housing and economic recovery in general. So today we are moving to an efficient, streamlined system. And I worked with the Office of Tribal Relations, and I denied the industry's further development of fossil fuels in our city. After living with HIV since the early 80s, I received the official AIDS diagnosis in 1985. I came home. I came home to be near my sister since I knew she would actually tolerate me. And fortunately, new medicine emerged. And that same doctor who told me to make plans told me to get back to work. So here I am, 27 years later, and I'm continuing to be of service to my hometown. Like me, I know that Portland's going to come back and we're all going to have another chance. And we are both focused on the long term. We're both long-term survivors. And I know Portland's best days lie ahead. Point is, I'm ready for a full term. I want to be a part of a council that's functioning well like I currently think it is today. And I'm looking forward to expanding on any of these thoughts with all of you in some questions and answers. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Commissioner Ryan. Remember, folks, put your questions in the chat, and Marcia's going to peel through those and try to grab as many as she can. And Marcia, are you ready to move on to some questions?
Okay, indeed, we have a couple for you here. From Nancy Hendrick, who writes that she struggled with getting food stamps, Oregon Health Plan, and SSI for a family member. Any research on how many homeless or unsheltered have had or are having struggles and delays getting these benefits that are due them?
Thank you for that question. I think we struggle in general with bringing services to the ground, where so many people obviously sadly are. One reason I pushed very hard for the county to finally really embrace real-time data as opposed to waiting for that every other year point in time count from HUD that really doesn't tell us much, and worked hard to get a contract signed with Built for Zero so that we can have better knowledge on actually how many people are on the streets, some basic knowledge about what services they need. And one reason I've been a big proponent of the Safe Trust Villages is because we really were missing an on-ramp from those that are chronically houseless, that's over 2 years on the streets, and have a dual diagnosis of either mental health or behavioral health. And simply put, we didn't have those type of systems in place. And so it's about getting that started to build that system. And when we have, when we've increased the navigation team, that's the outreach workers, that happened in the fall. Commissioner Stegman's here tonight. It was a joint effort with the county and the city, really coming together and aligning our investments and our resources like never before. And to the areas that we were really missing out on, one of the big ones was having more outreach workers on the ground, getting to know the houseless and the homeless by name. And it's really hard to know where you're going when you don't know where you are currently. And so I really want to stress how important it is. And once we have the social workers doing those assessments on the ground, getting to know everyone by name, will have obviously better opportunity to get the services they need, because people shouldn't wait until they're housed to get services such as SSI.
Right, right. And this follows pretty closely right along. Colleen Davis is asking, why is it taking so long to get these, the Safe Rest Villages and the other facilities that you guys are working on? If we saw people actually working on these, building them, if we could see something happening, I think people would feel like something was happening, but so we're feeling like, where are the holdups and what can we be doing to help make this move along faster?
Well, great question. No one thinks about that perhaps more than me. I was really thrilled that we had one of the first big major policy shifts in Multnomah County and the city with getting the Safe Rest Villages passed last July. It took about 2 months to get the staff up and running. And then we found out the ARPA rules were way more strict than the rescue dollars. That's not my way of saying excuses. I'm just saying that there were some headwinds that I didn't expect. But the good news is the soil's moving literally, and we have 2 sites that are under construction now. One is on Southwest NATO Parkway. The other, which will start probably next week, is out in Multnomah Village. We have providers for both of those sites. In fact, All Good, Do Good Multnomah rather is going to be the provider, and they've done a really good job out at St. John's Village, and we really wanted to build on their success there. We've also taken the temporary shelters that were put up at the beginning of COVID. They were pretty dilapidated down on Water Avenue. One we relocated up on Northeast Weidler, and I think you could simply see by putting a fence around it, making it more private. We're having no incidents there like we were down on Water Avenue. In fact, the neighbors who were not really for it when it moved in are saying that crime and incidents are down in that area. And most important, we're seeing that people are getting proper assessments, and we've had 15 people move into housing over the last 2 months at that site. So I'm a big believer in the restorative village concept. And I know that we will have all of them built in 2022, and we'll have several of them done before the end of the summer. And no one is more excited about that, I think, than my entire team who's been working their tail off. The mayor did an emergency order about a month ago, and thank goodness. And since then, it gave our office the authority to not allow the bureaus to have long conversations with their respective attorneys about fine print, but actually behave like we're in an emergency and get this done. So I've been a good fortune the last month to actually see this move much faster than it was prior.
Great. Great. Okay, and this again, I'm not surprised that you're going to hear mostly questions that relate to these issues. So then Kevin Fitz, speaking from the Oregon Mental Health Consumers point of view, but for a lot of us is really, how will the city of Portland support preventing rental evictions for those who are already in housing but are struggling with addictions and mental health issues?
Yeah, and I always say it's all of us together. So it's the one thing I've learned pretty quickly is how important it is to work with the city and the county both. I mean, we really are a team on this one, and we need better information, of course, about what the assessment is of everyone that's especially in our public housing. And your point is also that it doesn't matter if we have 5,000 new units to put people in if we have 10,000 new people on the streets. And so we have to stop the net gain, if you will, of people who are homeless on our streets. And I think one thing I've really called out since I've been in office is to get out of the denial, in my opinion, that one size does not fit all in terms of how we do this work. You can interview 100 people who are unfortunately homeless and you get 100 compelling stories. And many could be put into housing pretty quickly. And we have that option. We also have people who are working their tails off doing essential work that can't afford to live in Portland, and they can go into our units that are being built at anywhere from 30 to 60% AMI. And so I think if we have data that actually tells us the different compartments and what their conditions are, we'll be able to make better decisions and, more importantly, move people more quickly into housing, and then also keep those that are currently in housing so they're sustained and made whole. My hope is that the continuum is what we need to talk about. And it's the two parts of the continuum that are the weakest, in my opinion, in my 16 months in office is the on-ramps from the streets into any services, shelter services or housing services. And the other is an on-ramp into being a first-time home buyer. We have to get really serious about building generational wealth, especially for those that we've always failed. And so I'm excited to put some money in the budget this year for the first time in a while for land banking so that we can start to build housing for those that we need to build generational wealth for. And so for me, it's been important to actually have a continuum and work with our partners at the county to continue to support those services. We're in a state, I think you know this, I know Kevin knows this, that really isn't looking good in terms of mental health and behavioral health. It's quite embarrassing that my home state is anywhere from 47th to 51st in any ranking. And so simply put, we have the highest number of untreated addicts on the street with the lowest number of services, not shelters, but treatment centers for those individuals. That's not a good equation. And somebody with the lived experience of losing a brother from a family where the 5 of us that are alive are in some sort of a 12-step program, I speak personally with lived experience on this. And and one thing you know when you're in recovery is you got to get out of denial. The first step to recovery is to admit the truth. And I think Oregon and the city and the county have been, I think we've been too quiet about our failure in this regard. And I really hope that when you're talking to gubernatorial candidates, you keep elevating this to the #1 issue, because the lack of a safety net is embarrassing for my home state.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. We're coming up on 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Do you want to take a quick minute just to wrap up? Give us your final quick elevator speech.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm just like staring into all the little Zoom boxes. I know a few of you. It's so good to see you. I've really been enjoying having some more FaceTime of late. I'm sure some of you are as well. I will just say that I hope what you've seen with me in my first 16 months is somebody that's really been comfortable with the uncomfortable, being tossed into the deep end with the dotted line relationship to the county and just doing the best I can, taking on issues that are kind of geeky, like the permitting system, which is a total failure at the city, and tackling it and bringing together all the right people to get action. I'm somebody that has always been a bridge builder. I really believe that it's going to take the public and the private sector to work together. Portland's in a ditch, let's be honest, and it's a pretty deep one. And we're not going to get out of it unless we check our egos at the door, come together, work with private and public sectors and the nonprofit sector, align the arrows and get some work done. This is my home state. And if this is my last gig, I'm here 27 years later, I'm still vertical, I'm alive and well, and I'm just ready to swing hard for my hometown. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ryan.
Absolutely.
Folks, thank you all for the great questions. Real quick, a quick reminder of how this works. Candidates give a quick 3 to 4 minute intro, and then we'll try to do about 8 minutes worth of questions, and then a quick wrap up from the candidate. And we're going to go to our next candidate, Terri Preeg Rigsby, who's running for Portland Metro seat 6, District 6. Yes. Okay. So remember, folks, put your questions in the chat. Marshall will ask the questions. Just we'll naturally flow through this, I'm sure. Terri, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, thank you for having me tonight. And it's really nice to see so many familiar faces and fellow precinct committee people. I've been one for several years, and I really appreciate all the work that Multnomah County Democrats does. I moved to Portland about 25 years ago. Growing up, I lived in Lima, Peru, and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, in the Washington, D.C. area. And this is really the first place I came to that felt like home. And I've built my family here and raising my son, who's a public school student. And I really love it here. But like so many of us, I've really seen our livability in decline, and I want to be part of that solution. So for about 23 years, I've been an environmental leader here in District 6, which is where I've lived for the past 25 years. Serving as chair of the board of the Trine Creek Watershed Council, as well as an interim executive director and elected director and board chair of the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. So in that capacity, I've done a lot of work collaborating with cities, county, metro, and state and federal agencies, as well as nonprofits, to identify solutions and get projects built on the ground while improving and building our green workforce to assist with some of those solutions, as well as addressing our urban heat island issues across the region with increasing tree canopy. And that's very important to me, and an ethic and an experience that I will bring with me to Metro. And professionally, I worked as a senior performance auditor under 3 Oregon Secretaries of State, Bill Bradbury, Kate Brown, and Jean Atkins. And in that capacity, I analyzed publicly funded programs, state agencies, and TriMet to identify areas for improvement, best management practices, and innovative solutions so that those agencies could deliver better services to more people. And I think it's time that we bring some of that innovative problem solving to the region for some of our most confounding problems, and bring a level of accountability and transparency to our local government that is really necessary right now, especially while public opinion is in a state of distrust of our government. So I would bring my values of accountability and transparency with public funds to the table, particularly while Metro is implementing the affordable housing bond, the housing services tax, and also as it is planning the next version of the regional transportation plan in 2023, looking at improvements along 205 and potential congestion pricing or tolling, as well as the Columbia River bridge, crossing there, and the Rose Quarter improvements. So I would bring a keen eye for accountability and transparency in making those decisions. And finally, I live with a mobility disability as a result of a spinal injury a few years ago. So I lived most of my life as an able-bodied person, and now I have a mobility disability. And 75% of us will experience a temporary or permanent disability during our lifetime. And at this time, we have no one elected at the city, county, or regional level with a mobility disability. And I think it's time that we have someone that is representing such a large portion of our population, and particularly at Metro, because Metro is the regional planning agency. And it convenes the 23 cities and 3 counties and identifies regional solutions. And we need to have a perspective that to ensure that our public transportation, siting of our parks and natural areas and affordable housing and smart urban planning is planned and implemented in a way that is accessible for everyone. So thank you for inviting me here tonight, and I welcome any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Terri, for joining us. How do you say your middle name? Is it Preeg or Preeg?
It's a double last name, so it's Terri Preeg Rigsby. My grandparents were Norwegian, came through Ellis Island, and Preeg is just a made-up name because the folks at Ellis Island couldn't read the handwriting. So it's a sort of made-up quasi-Norwegian name.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Marcia, we're at 4 minutes, 45 seconds. Do we have questions?
You know, no one has put up a question yet, so I have one while we're waiting.
Great, Marcia, thanks.
Thank you, because you had mentioned about the heat islands that really, being a Southeast Portlander myself, I'm well aware of it, and you know, having the really deadly heat that we experienced last year and are likely to see more of.
Absolutely.
I was actually struck, and this is one of those city county kind of things. I was reading that the city of Portland has decided to not go forward with the Friends of Trees project where they do like community planting of trees along the roadways, you know, along the parking strips. And it just struck me as, you know, they had maybe some other plans about how they're going to do trees, but it was interesting because there's both the trees themselves and the community involvement that comes from doing that kind of work together. Mm-hmm. That in all of these projects, you know, I think we really need to make sure and keep the residents as part of the work.
I totally agree with that. So as someone who's been working in the environmental field for over 2 decades, you know, we knew that our urban canopy was set to diminish based on the species of trees that were planted and the age. So we, some of you probably read, and I think it was last week, there was articles about that we're actually losing urban canopy while we are also experiencing increased temperatures in the summer. So we knew it was coming, and we should have done more to address that earlier. And here we are, and we absolutely need to plant more trees. And in particular, in our more urban areas where there's more impervious surface. And I believe that the city discontinued is putting its funding out for open bid contract with Friends of Trees in an attempt to open that option up for other contractors. So I'm not sure what the full decision process was around that. I've worked with Friends of Trees. I've planted, like 1,000 trees or more in the last 20 years. So I think that it is critical that we add urban tree canopy and that we engage the community in that. And it's, as you said, it's an excellent community builder. Who doesn't love planting trees, right? It's fun and it's really meaningful. So, as Metro is a regional convening agency, and as someone who has done work in all 3 counties, I think that Metro could be a leader, or at least a convener of adding to our urban tree canopy.
Right. And then we got a couple more here. The one is about tolling and the concern for low-income workers who are going to have to commute.
Yeah, so I represent special districts in Multnomah County on the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, and we had a vote on tolling a portion of I-205 about 2 weeks ago, and I voted no. And the reason is that that project is taken sort of out of order. It wasn't in the original regional transportation plan that is set to expire in 2023. So I think that that there was good planning that went into the current transportation plan, and that council should put the same consideration into updates to the regional transportation plan. So that project belongs in the next version. Also, there's inadequate plans now for diversion off of 205 for folks that do not want to pay tolls or cannot pay tolls. So there's no diversion plan. And so that is going to force people that have to use that section of 205 to get to work or to school, that they have to use that, and that will have a disproportionate impact on our low-income residents. We know this. And so there's no plan for diversion or for alleviating that cost burden on our low-income residents. And finally, Metro itself has a lot of data, and it has 4 different congestion pricing scenarios that it could implement. Tolling is one of the 4 options. And I think that it is really critical that Metro take a look at our entire highway system in the region. And that is not just 205, it is also I-5 and other, 405. The whole system needs to be taken into consideration as interconnected web, and any congestion pricing that is implemented needs to be consistent throughout the region.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Where are we, Julio?
How will I just address disconnect between decisions made at TriMet and Metro, especially as we need to make climate-friendly choices? That's a really tricky one, Catherine. Thank you for asking that. So it's very unusual in our system of government here. Metro plans for transportation infrastructure. TriMet builds it. And so TriMet does not necessarily have to implement what Metro recommends. And that's a really tricky disconnect. So I've worked through the Soil and Water Conservation District. I've worked with a lot of urban and rural, the divide there, environmentalists and farmers, and a lot of disparate points of view, and have been able to build coalitions to identify solutions to move forward. So I would use that skill and experience to work with TriMet to make climate-friendly choices. We have to do that. And Metro and other regional governments, we've all set carbon goals. We know that climate change is here. We have to act quickly and swiftly to implement climate-friendly choices, and that includes getting cars off the road. So we have to invest in better walking and biking routes. We definitely need to increase our public transportation options, and that can include bus rapid transit, which is easier and less expensive to implement than light rail, and less likely to bisect neighborhoods, as we've seen can happen with some transportation choices. And we also need to make sure that our urban planning choices and where we're choosing to build new affordable housing is also located in parts of the region where people can access good family wage jobs, and they can easily get to services that they need, including grocery stores, doctors, libraries, schools. And so we have to make sure that those land use and urban planning choices support fewer cars on the roads. And
Terri, thank you, Terri.
Okay.
You want to take a quick 20 seconds just to wrap it up real quick and say a quick goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, just really appreciate the time tonight, and I look forward to continuing to serve the region, and make sure that you vote May 17th. So thank you.
Thank you, Terri. Remember that.
And Terri, you
go ahead.
could be sure to put, I don't know if you did, put your contact information and website and such in the chat. We'll share that out to the PCPs afterward, as well as I will email you any follow-up questions that come up.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Terri. And next we're going to go to Katherine Thomason. Katherine, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. It's nice to see so many friendly faces. So just a little background. As you know, I care about people and I care about the planet that provides us with what we need. I come from a working class union family, and like many, I also grew up with an abusive parent. Out of that experience, I came away with a drive to protect everyone's human rights. I went to medical school in downtown Detroit and was really stunned by the lack of services, and as a result, did coursework on healthcare access. But the group of fellow medical students that I worked with opened my eyes to the world of advocacy. I learned government must be pushed to do the right thing, and then we need to fight to keep it. And I've been an advocate for my whole life for Medicaid access, for right to reproductive health that includes safe legal abortion, and for the environment through a decade or more with Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, and then as director of the national PSR in Washington, D.C. Since coming back to Portland, I chose to work with Multnomah County Democrats and with and now as chair of the Environmental Caucus of the state Democrats. Because one of the main reasons I'm running is that we face an existential crisis with climate change. We have to justly transition off fossil fuels and protect those most vulnerable from the climate impacts of smoke and heat domes, to just name a few. I've worked with our team to fight and win renewable electricity targets in 2021, and then to improve that legislation to protect workers this year. But we're not moving fast enough. In 2023, I want to pass 3 major solutions for climate change with the collaboration of the huge team working on it. First, reduce emissions from our building sector that didn't pass this year. Second, develop a program to increase uptake and storage of carbon in our forests and agricultural land. And third, to improve targets and methods to reduce emissions from transportation, our second leading sector, by advancing electrification and improving our overall vision to include transit, intercity busing, and rail. My experience as a primary care physician will also help us. I really want to work hard on rebuilding our broken mental health and addictions treatment system. We've done the hard work. We've raised money to do that, and now we need to do it. In the area of housing, the state has to increase and improve the system for rental assistance. As Dan said, we can't keep housing people if we don't turn off the spigot of houselessness. We also need to make sure that affordable housing is integrated in these plans for climate smart neighborhoods that right now is being planned for with the growth planning between our cities and our departments of land use and transportation to meet the goals of the governor's climate executive order. And lastly, I really want to get corporate funding out of politics in Oregon. So I welcome your questions.
See, so far I don't have any.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. My goodness. Sorry, Catherine. I forgot to mention Catherine is running for House District 45. So yeah, do we have any questions for Catherine? If not, I do have a question. What made you take this step, Catherine?
Well, climate change. So I learned about the opening 2 nights before filing deadline. And I was looking because we were endorsing people on behalf of the Environmental Caucus. And Barbara Smith Warner, who is not running for re-election, gave me fantastic advice. So I talked to my opponent. There were actually 2 at the time. I talked to both of them in trying to make a decision on whether or not I even needed to run. And I just, so one of the people who was running also on climate, and I would not have filed if that person had continued. But I feel like it's the most important issue right now. And I have so much experience in working on it that I just felt compelled to run.
All right, I appreciate that. We do have a question that popped up, Marcia, I believe.
Yes, yeah, I see indeed. And it's a tough one, of course, which is how are you going to fight timber unity or collaborate with timber unity or deal with the timber unity? There you go.
There you go. So there's a lot of things that we can and need to do to help rural areas and realize improvements. So for the last 2 years, I was fighting for severance tax on when timber is cut, which would actually bring money to rural areas where they have a lot of logging. And people are very afraid of doing anything that makes the large corporations upset. But they're making incredible profits. And I think that we need to change things and let people know about the possibilities for increased numbers of jobs if we change the way we do logging, increase protection for water, which has been identified by everybody across the state as the biggest impact on our state of climate change. So I feel like I've done a lot of outreach to different commissioners across the state and how we can speak about these issues in ways that help people understand what the goals are and that we're all wanting to work together to solve these issues.
And then, and I'm sorry, Lisa Wilkie, I'm sorry I missed this. Yes, you had asked. Katherine, what is your candidate superpower?
Well, let's see. I would have to say that I actually enjoy collaborating and bringing people together. So I'm probably one of the weird ones who have thought that Zoom is a wonderful thing, that we have more people testifying, we have more people engaged around the climate issues and all the issues at the legislature. And so encouraging people to participate and be engaged, I think is an important thing for us to strive for.
And actually, this kind of goes right to the next question from Henry, which is what should climate activists be asking for or demanding, or how do we have a message that's effective to move Oregon as quickly as we need to move?
Well, I think that like the rally I went to when the Business Alliance was saying we should close down Portland Clean Energy Fund, we need to call it out. We need to work well with the media so that other people who aren't going to a rally can hear about it in a way that makes them aware that the Portland Clean Energy Fund really helps folks who need it the most in terms of both workers and job programs and low-income folks who need solar, who need insulation and the kinds of projects that this is going to fund. And to realize that corporations care about their bottom line to some degree, and therefore we need to continue the work in spite of that, so that we can have the solutions that we need. And looking for other solutions. I have something exciting about that. Calling natural gas, which has really been fighting hard against building code changes, and coming up with I read about a new solution, which we don't have to recreate the wheel. There's creating a thermal utility. So instead of them replacing all their leaky underground gas pipes, instead they would build new pipes that would carry fluid that is cooled in the summer and heated in the winter in a geothermal heat pump sort of way to all the houses in the neighborhood or the apartment buildings. And they would still then be a utility, but they wouldn't be peddling natural gas. Isn't that a cool idea?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. All right. And then we have a question from DeMarco about how you feel about the sunrise movement. And I'm not sure how much time we have here, Julio, for questions. People are starting to ask more. So
we have 2.5 minutes, and I want to give Katherine a quick wrap up, have her time. And then we did have one request. Michelle's having trouble typing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So why don't you answer the question about sunrise, and then we can have Michelle ask her question too. Okay.
I am thrilled that young people are engaged. It's absolutely essential. I'm thrilled that Portland Public Schools just passed a climate curriculum that they need to implement rather than administrate. But it's important to give young people a sense of ownership and ability to impact policy, because otherwise it feels very hopeless and difficult to cope with. And they want to learn about these things and take action. So getting youth involved in climate issues is essential.
Great. And then Michelle, if you would, you can unmute yourself, I think.
Thank you. Katherine, what is your position? How are you going to help get the anti-bullying bill that the DPO, SEC, and the Stonewall Caucus have been trying to pass for about 5 years? Are you going to vote to get that through this time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My son was bullied in 3rd grade, and it was horrible. I think that, that bullying goes on for anybody who's a little bit different, and it's essential to take action on that. Collaboration. I hope to take lessons from ConFam, who has just done an amazing job in the legislature in building bridges and reaching out in ways that I haven't seen in a long time. It's really been fantastic working with her.
Thank you, Katherine. We're coming up on 12 minutes. Do you want to give us a minute or so, just quick wrap up?
Sure. It's going to require radical action to get off fossil fuels, change forestry and agriculture. So again, I find hope in the numbers of people who've been working on the governor's executive order on climate. And I have never seen a program that came out of DEQ for the clean fuels and industry. And because of all the people power, the Environmental Quality Commission said to DEQ, you need to do a better job and come back with a stronger program. So things can happen. I have hope to make that happen faster. So we need to all work together in creating the transition that we need and take care of people and create and support and provide a safety net for people who need it.
Thank you, Katherine. I assume you put your information in the chat as well so people can find you.
I sure will. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Katherine, candidate for House District 45. Our next candidate up is Commissioner Lori Stegman, who's running for Multnomah County Chair. Oh, there she is. I assume you're ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. My name is Lori Stegman, and I'm running for the Multnomah County Chair seat. Currently, I am the Vice Chair on the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. I'm an immigrant. I'm the first Asian American to ever serve on the board in 168 years. I grew up in the Rockwood neighborhood of Gresham, where I've been a small business owner for 30 years. And I'm the only commissioner for the last 5.5 years who has worked collaboratively with 5 cities, including Portland, Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale, Wood Village, and the unincorporated areas, which is no easy task considering the rural and urban areas that exist in my district. Those relationships have resulted in a $40 million investment in homeless services, plans for an East County Homeless Service Center with 50 beds of alternative shelter, 334 units of deeply affordable housing, a food bank, and a partnership with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office's HOPE team, where they connect houseless residents to services. Well, I think we can all probably agree that homelessness and public safety are 2 of the most important priorities for our community. We need to implement solutions that address the drivers of these crises. I believe some of the root causes of these issues are due to generational poverty, trauma, shame, addiction, and racism. We must go upstream and offer people access to opportunities to make better choices for themselves and their loved ones. By making our communities stronger and safer is how we can reclaim lives and build community resilience. And one of the ways we can do that is by providing economic stability. As a Gresham City Councilor and Redevelopment Commissioner for 6 years, I championed the redevelopment of over 1,200 acres located in the Rockwood neighborhood, one of the most low-income and diverse neighborhoods in the county, where we assisted 40 new businesses to relocate there, added 700 new jobs with a $62,000 average annual salary. We delivered on the construction of the Rockwood Public Safety Building and increased access to affordable housing. We leveraged $80 million to provide community services like a daycare, medical services, workforce development organizations, and a market hall to address the food desert. We also received national attention for the Garage to Storefront program that helped revitalize our downtown core. And we were one of the first cities to build a net zero wastewater treatment plant, resulting in a savings of $500,000 a year to taxpayers. My experience in economic development will pay dividends as I lead the county's effort to redevelop nearly 90 acres of county-owned property that will be transformed into housing, a workforce center, and green space. And while my business and political experience are foundational to running a nearly $3 billion organization with over 6,000 employees at the county, it's my lived experience that enables me to lead with passion and with purpose. You may have heard of the famous Holt Airlift, where over 3,000 Korean orphans were adopted by American families. I was one of those babies. And while I'm incredibly blessed to have been adopted by a loving family, we struggled with food and housing insecurity. But because I had access to public assistance at the most critical times in my life, I was able to break the cycle of poverty. And that's why I'm running. I want to ensure that everyone has those same opportunities to not just survive, but to thrive. It's clear that the systems and approaches that we've been using aren't working quickly or broadly enough. I have a proven track record of not just making good policy, but of actually implementing policies successfully. And I can tell you, you don't stay in business for 30 years without being able to execute your strategy and your vision. Those organizational skills are the foundation that I have built real world solutions on, like earning a $100,000 grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to work on economic recovery, clearing obstacles that resulted in a student-based healthcare center at Reynolds High School, which also provides mental health services for students, and co-sponsoring the Construction Diversity Equity Fund for pre-apprenticeships and workforce support for communities of color and women. While my accomplishments are important and prove my ability to get the job done, it's my vision that will transform our community. As chair, I will create an Office of Reentry Services to prevent people from churning through our criminal justice system. I will lead the charge to review and update our civil commitment laws and create a team similar to the Portland Street Response to divert people out of the criminal justice system. I will create a 24/7 first responder drop-off site and detox center with urgency. I will create an economic development and workforce stability department to connect people to jobs and career training with the county, as well as the trades and the private sector. I will advocate for the adoption of Portugal's model to our drug crisis, where possession or use of any drug is considered a health issue, not a crime, and individuals are mandated to medical treatment. But drug dealing is treated as a criminal act. This approach has been proven to be more cost-effective than incarceration, and their drug-related death rates have plummeted in Portugal. So I'm excited to be here and to share with you the vision I have and where I believe that the county needs to go. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my vision with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Marcia, we've got about 6 minutes for questions. It looks like we have some.
Muted. I can't ask anything if I'm muted. There are a lot of things on your plate. Bill Harris asks, what is probably the most challenging issue facing the county in the next cycle, in the next 4 years?
Oh, there's so many things. I would say probably the highest priority is getting the data out of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. So there is a real mismatch. You know, there's this conversation you all have heard about whether we should invest a large amount of our money into emergency shelter versus long-term or permanent supportive housing. And I think that's a false binary. We need a continuum of services, but we can't make informed data decisions because we don't have all the data. I just got a briefing and asked, I want to know how many people are we turning away from shelters? If we knew that, then we would know how many shelter beds we need. But more importantly, what kind of shelter beds? We serve veterans, we serve survivors of domestic violence, we serve the LGBTQ community. So it's really, being a business owner, I think about segmenting the market. One size does not fit all. People have different needs. Veterans, being in a congregate shelter, that's not doable for people that have PTSD. So really looking and meeting people where they are is absolutely critical. Transitional housing is really important. I've been a big fan of the Salvation Army's, it's called the Bridgeway of Hope. They have 90 beds, it's transitional housing, it's about two-year program, and they want to work with the trades. And they have a culinary program, and so I'm hoping that I can get funding. But until we know where the bottlenecks are, it's hard just to say, well, we're just going to put X amount of money. So I did receive, and I'll put the link in there. Our Joint Office of Homeless Services is finally putting some data up. And I know Commissioner Ryan has been such a good partner. And I know he mentioned that the Built for Zero, but it's, I'm really, in my personal life, I'm an insurance agent. So it's about data, it's about evidence-based data. And we're getting a flagship library in East Multnomah County, which I'm so excited about. And then talking about the student-based healthcare center. Well, how did we know where to put those services? Because we used data. We knew that East Multnomah County did not have the same amount of square footage of library space per capita compared to the rest of the county. The student-based healthcare center, we knew that this was a very underserved part of the county. So by using that data, that can inform our decisions and our policies.
Great, thank you. And then we have a question which, although you've addressed a lot of issues around behavioral health, if you would talk a little bit about the Downtown Behavioral Health Resource Center and what your hopes for this project are.
I am so excited. You all know we talk about mental health, but frankly, we haven't invested in it. Well, we are finally. And so, in fact, I'm going to be touring next week. I've seen the plans. It's trauma informed. There'll be 3 stories. And the other thing, it's a day center too, because we always talk about where do houseless individuals go during the day? Well, they will have a place now. So people experiencing, behavioral health challenges, they'll have a place to, get food, do their laundry, have access to computers, get peer support. And then we'll have about 30 beds of shelter, as well as we'll have 30 beds of transitional housing. So this is the model. And my dream, this is the pilot, is that once we get this up and running, we have the proof of concept, then I want to have a behavioral health resource in every district in Multnomah County. So I am super stoked. When we talk about mental health, I mentioned, the school-based health centers. That's a real opportunity. And we know that our youth are struggling, and and we've already talked about how there's just not the investments in those kinds of supports. So I'm just really excited about it, and it's going to be amazing.
Well, we're already coming up on 12 minutes, if you can believe that. I tell you, it moves really, really fast. Do you want to take a quick minute or so just to wrap us up? I don't know if maybe just take some time away from this to answer some of the questions, because you actually got quite a few. So.
Okay. Well, I'll just say, at the end of the day, Multnomah County is a business. And we need someone who has business management and operational experience to ensure the return on investment that taxpayers expect and deserve. And if voters like the way things are going, then they'll probably vote for someone else. But if they want someone who is going to challenge the status quo, who has proven experience to bring real solutions to real problems, then I believe that I'm the most qualified candidate. So I'm excited to serve, and I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to use my passion, my intelligence, and my drive to really make a difference for so many of our residents in Multnomah County.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Appreciate all of our candidates for showing up here. However, we are, believe, missing two this evening. Rene Gonzalez and Dr. Thuy Tran. I'm not sure how you say her first name. But I believe, Britton, do you see the same thing? I just checked, but I don't want to make sure I'm not missing them.
I haven't seen that, but.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and move forward to Ashton Simpson, who is a candidate for Metro Council District 1. Are you ready to go?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me in this space tonight. My name is Ashton Simpson. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm running for Metro Council here in District 1, outer East Portland and parts of unincorporated Damascus, as well as the three cities, Wood Village, Troutdale, Fairview. And I'm coming to you tonight because, yes, we are, as alluded to, we're in a state of crisis in a number of areas. And for one, I want to say this: I'm a proud East Portland resident, but I'm also a nonprofit executive that helps in the community to make sure people have access and connectivity through walking. I'm also a veteran, retired, also a father and a PSU alum, and I'm somebody who's committed to public service. I've been dedicated to public service now my entire life. I'm 37 years old, and when I joined the Air Force, I had the idea of going in and learning about engineering, and I did, in construction. And that took me to a number of places globally. I've gotten the opportunity to experience different cultures, different infrastructure types and transportation types, from South Korea all the way out to Aviano, Italy. And I retired out of Fairchild Air Force Base up in Spokane back in 2015. Upon retirement, I enrolled at PSU because I wanted to, continue working in the community, but I also wanted to bridge that gap. And I knew that what was missing in my communities was infrastructure. And that was something that I worked directly with when I was in the Air Force. So I worked with, I went through the community development program, earned my degree, and wanted to bridge not only those gaps in terms of infrastructure, but also build up social infrastructure within people, because I grew up in an underinvested community in Houston, Texas, which really resembles a lot of Rockwood and Gresham still to this day. From there, I worked at Colas Construction, worked alongside union workers and laborers. I believe in making sure folks have that level of representation as they go into the workforce, because we all benefit from the work that unions laid out, from that 40-hour work week to having benefits to having time off. And we have to always acknowledge that piece. From there, I moved on to the Rosewood Initiative, where I was a community asset planner, and I got to work on the ground. That's typically how I like to do things. I don't like sitting in offices and looking at PowerPoints and things like that. For me, that's not leadership. Leadership is showing up, seeing what the conditions are, seeing what the people are saying and understanding, because you can't lead unless you learn from them. And that was a key insight for me, because I got to see a lot of the issues that have now overflowed onto us as a society. I saw them bubbling up there, from houselessness to addiction to mental health issues to the heat domes. We knew this was coming because East Portland particularly lacks in shade equity. And so from there, I moved on to Oregon Walks, where I'm currently the executive director, and I'm working to make sure, one, communities are safe for walking for everyone. And that includes making sure that future developments are age friendly and that we have adequate amounts of green space to do this. So for me, my key priorities are, number one, planning into the future. We have to invest in communities of color, period. For far too long, we have forgotten about those folks, myself included. And we need to make sure that there's adequate housing, adequate access to jobs, because right now, especially jobs, this is why we see this uptick in gun violence from my community. I hate that it was not brought up today, because I can't sleep at night because I have a young Black son who has to grow up in this society, and knowing that the opportunities did not exist for another generation of young Black men. And now we're at this place where now they're fighting and shooting and killing one another. That is just plain unacceptable. So through Metro, I want to promote the Construction Careers Pathway Program, especially for those folks in that range of 19 to 30, to get them into pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, because they need a skill. You can't just live on the streets and do those things forever. We know this. But also, as we go around and we look at our city, we see houselessness, and we know that Metro is working through its affordable housing measure, supporter services measure, but we need to create that ecosystem. We need to make sure that there's transitional housing, low barrier entry housing. We need to make sure we are planning for this in areas where we aren't pushing folks out of sight, out of mind, because guess what? When they get swept in Portland through that emergency declaration, they end up on Marine Drive, and they end up just degrading that environment out there. And nobody says anything. Nobody cares, because guess what? It's an out of sight, out of mind mentality. We can't allow that to happen anymore, because that's not safe for anyone, especially our youth. I live in the Russell neighborhood right here in Deep East. We had a huge camp right in our neighborhood, and getting kids to school, safe routes to school is important. This is another piece that I want to work on as Metro Counselor, is making sure that our youth have access to quality education and feel safe enough to walk. Another piece that I really am passionate about is our climate. And we can do that through a number of ways: tree planting, green spaces. But I think the big one is how we handle our refuse and recycling. We can do more to change what that system looks like. And with Metro controlling that entire ladder, it's our job and it's our duty to make sure that, number one, we are taking care of our refuse in a way that doesn't push off the problem to future generations, but two, making sure that our city's clean. We should have more RID patrols out picking up trash and mattresses, and making sure that our streets don't look like they're in a state of disrepair and squalor. So as your next Metro Counselor out here, I want to make sure that we cover all of those things and make sure that equity is included in everything that we do, because right now, as I see it and as I observe, it has been lacking for some time. And I don't like to come off as angry, but when you live in a situation that we're living in out here, it's really hard not to get your emotions involved, knowing that there is so much going on. And I will say this, as before moving into the space of Metro Council, I'm already serving on the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation through ODOT for making sure that projects are happening in the community, looking at what tolling and pricing options look like. I served on the Pricing Options for Equitable Mobility Task Force, which, by the way, I saw the comment about making sure folks who don't have access to funds for getting back and forth to work through tolling. This is why we need to invest in regional travel options, making sure that we have a robust transit system, bike lanes, sidewalks, and things like that, so that we get folks out of those cars and we have access and options to get them to where they need to be. I also serve as the chair of the Fixing Our Streets Oversight Committee, which is everybody's in this room dime tax we pay at the pump. We make sure that streets are safe and projects are paved. And with that, this is how we heal a community. From my vantage point, I go in, I advocate for projects and things so that we can get folks and have folks in this community have hope that there is an opportunity for them to exist and make a living wage throughout their lifetime. And I'm open to any questions that anybody might have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcia, do we have any questions? We've got about 4 minutes or so for questions, and then we'll let Mr. Simpson do a wrap up.
Okay. Let's see. Well, yes, one about Oregon walks and making the metro area more walkable, more walk friendly, which living out here on the southeast, I bought my dog a high visibility vest because I was afraid she was going to get run over if we took a walk. That's how how it is out here.
I absolutely. So again, this is my day job. This is what I do every day. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really struck me, especially last year when we fought hard to get 82nd Avenue transferred over, was how the street was made up. And we know that was an ODOT facility, but now it'll soon to be owned by PBOT. But here in this community, sidewalk is lacking, either in size or it doesn't exist at all. I can tell you on Outer Halsey right now, for the first time ever, there's continuous sidewalk going down from 102nd to 162nd, at least on one side of the road. And people were using that sidewalk before they were finished. And so my dedication to all of this is making sure that we do have a community that is walkable, because guess what? That's what we found out during the pandemic is a lot of folks are getting out walking and moving around, and that was their only way of escape and reprieve from being cooped up inside. And if you don't have access to those things, people's mental health really went on the decline. And I can tell you, at least from my day job, it's really nice to put on walks and have folks show up, 20, 30, 40 folks, just to show up and be in community with one another, to get out and walk, because they can't do it at home.
The other, and I don't know if I saw this here, but I have seen some concerns, and this is definitely a metro question. It's really difficult to travel from one part of Oregon to another on transit. If you want to go downtown, that's great. If you want to go from Rockwood you need to go to someplace in Clackamas, I don't know what you're going to do.
Oh, look, I'll tell you what needs to happen. There needs to be a coordinated effort between Metro Council and TriMet, especially in creating more frequent express service. We're seeing it down Division, but we need to make sure that happens on roads like Stark and Halsey, and also make sure that those north-south connections are also happening. I'll tell you also, one of the things that I found out in my time running for this seat is I live, again, 138th and Halsey, right behind Glendevere. I went out to go talk to some constituents in Damascus, and it took me 30 minutes to get from my house to Deep Creek School. Now, if I'm having a meeting at Grand at Metro headquarters, I'm not expecting anybody from Damascus to drive out almost an hour to come and talk. What needs to happen in my mind is I need an office out that way. I need an office that constituents can come to that is closer, that they can come and share their concerns. Because I saw a comment about conservative voters. Those are my people too. Just because their ideology is in another place than mine doesn't mean I don't serve them. I know that they need help too. And I think sometimes it's education. I know that it's hard to, especially in this climate that we're living in, you get, you're a leftist and this and that. But I think when you sit down and you have those kitchen dinner conversations, those dinner table conversations, and say, hey, how much did you spend on groceries? How can we help with that? How do we stabilize this region to make sure that you can continue to afford your house? How do we make sure things are set up so you can age in place? I think those are the conversations we need to start to have to pull those folks in, so that one, we are moving as a cohesive unit, and two, we can pass things like a transportation measure that we know needs to be done within this region. The last one failed, and guess what? outer East County and East County and East Portland communities suffered from it. We went to square zero because of 6 of the 13 corridors that were on that measure were here in our community. So.
All right. Thank you, Ashton Simpson. We're on a little past 12 minutes, but I want to give you a minute to wrap up. Give us your little elevator speech. Let everybody know why you're the candidate of choice.
Absolutely, because I have a proven track record of bringing people together, solving pressing issues, all with a focus on equity. East County is one of the most diverse in our region, and as a Black man, I will bring my lived experience to ensure that Metro works for everybody. And I want to say thank you all again for allowing me to come into this space and share a little bit about myself, and I look forward to serving you all.
Thank you so much. Hey, folks, everybody can unmute and just applaud the candidates that are here. Big thank you for showing up and taking some time to meet with us, and all of y'all for sticking through with this, and then those of you who are continuing to our CC meeting at 7:30. You know, this doesn't get put on by just one person. We have our campaign committee who makes this happen. Our current communications chair was on that committee, Britton Taylor, who helped to organize this, as well as Nan Stark, our committee chair, is here as well. Do y'all want to say a couple of quick words? I don't know if y'all feel like up to it right now.
I have nothing to say other than just appreciate everyone coming, not just the PCPs, but the candidates and their staffs. Everyone was a pleasure to work with, and it's just nice to hear people's stories firsthand. So again, thanks for sharing this space with us.
Thank you, Britton. Nan, did you want to say anything? I'm not sure. I thought I saw you were here earlier. Maybe not. Okay. Nan's fantastic. The campaign committee is working their tails off. This is a busy season for them. They've got a lot of activities going on. We've got a forum coming up at the end of this month. We'll have an announcement going out for that here shortly. So it'll be available online as well on YouTube. We will have some live presence, but it's going to be a pretty small crowd in person. We certainly hope that you'll at least be able to attend online. And yeah, again, thank you so much for candidates, especially, you know, for those first-time candidates stepping up who have never done it before and are running for a big position to represent us, and who have worked with us in our organization for quite a while now. So I'm glad to see that we've got some new leadership coming up in our city and in our county. I think it's fantastic, and I thank you all so much for joining us. We're a little bit early because we had some candidates who weren't able to make it tonight, and I believe that they are still not here, correct? Anybody correct me if I am wrong. That was, we had Rene Gonzalez and Thuy Tran. Dr. Thuy Tran. No. Okay. Well, again, folks, thank you all so much. We've got a little bit of a break here, which I think those of us going into our central committee meeting might appreciate. So folks, if you don't want to sit around for the business meeting, you're welcome to drop off. Thank you all so much for joining us. If not, let's take a few minutes, folks, to take a break, and then we'll keep this online, open and available for personal chatting, but please keep it clean, be courteous to each other, and be respectful, and no yelling at each other. And yeah, we'll come back at 7:30 for our business meeting. Any objections to that? Okay, hearing none, thank you all so much. We'll take a few minutes and then